Hi, hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Amy Conway. I am the founder of Amy Elizabeth Co., where I provide coaching and consulting to individuals and businesses. I spent nearly 20 years working for Nordstrom, which probably most people know, but it's a retail brand in North America, and I worked in executive management and most recently left there as the Human Resources Director for the Northeast region for stores. And I'm just taking decades of professional and personal experiences and have transitioned into this career of coaching, working with individuals, mostly in areas of leadership and relationships with a lot of mindset and wellness woven in. So that is a little bit about me.
Okay, I'm going to just pull your presentation up, Amy, and as I had told to our keynote wrapper for you, editor, just let me know when you want me to move you forward, okay?
Okay, great. You can probably go into the next slide.
Okay. So it's HR's role influencing change, so everyone should know what you're talking about.
Oh, yes, sorry. Well, thank you so much for having me again. I'm excited to speak on this topic around influencing change. I myself am so passionate about all of the different dialogues we have around the change process, and it is a huge area that is focused a lot on my now coaching business when I'm working with clients, and a lot of them come to me when they're experiencing some really big life changes or they're looking for some really big life changes. But today, we're specifically focusing on this opportunity in front of HR leaders every day to create and influence more changes within their organization. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some few key areas and highlights into the evolution around HR and what really sets us apart now, and how we're uniquely positioned to take the opportunity to lead change more than ever before in your organization, and how we can do that through transitioning from data and analytics into more storytelling in order to really influence change. And then I'll leave you with hopefully a few key takeaways to continue your own path towards influencing change in your own businesses. Next slide. Well, 2020 really began for the HR team at Nordstrom with several years of major org changes and shifts to the way we were approaching the business. We were moving from payroll and administrative and employee issues into more terms like employee self-service and business partners and operating models, and that had been happening for a half a decade prior. And 2020 was another really big year ahead focused on embedding those changes deeper into the business. And I remember so clearly that March 15th came along, and I sat on a call at what felt like midnight on the East Coast as Jamie Nordstrom, who was the president of stores at the time, stared at this team virtually on a Zoom call of 20 HR directors and SVPs, and we were the team that supported the full fleet of stores. And at the time, we had over 300 stores and 40,000 employees working in those stores. And it was just inevitable by the look on his face. We were going to have to shut down an entire fleet and bring the four-wall business to a screeching halt with no answers on how long that would last. And the worst part of it is we had 24 hours to figure out how in the world we were going to get it done. And typically on those calls, the HRDs sat there to support. We were our typical role as a business partner, and a lot of you understand what that role is in supporting the business leaders and them making decisions. And that's what we were typically there for, but not this time and not this call. We weren't playing a support role any longer. We were leading the way, and the HR team was taking over. We were the ones that knew the laws. We knew the head count. We knew the health and safety concerns that were looming ahead. HR no longer needed to bring data to earn their seat at the table because there was no data this time. There were no analytics to run. There was no history to fall back on to help inform so a business leader could feel good about how to make a decision to move forward. It was all of our years of trust building and relationship building and intuition and all of just that random knowledge that all of us in human resources collect along the way from our day-to-day life that was going to be how we figured out how we proceeded during this crisis. And this just wasn't one call, and it wasn't a few days. This is the way things continue for months. And I always knew how vital my role was, and I think my business partner knew it too. He was incredible, but this was different. I realized in that moment, and now maybe a year after, there was no difference between a business leader and an HR leader in that time. We were all just leaders. And whoever got the answer first or got the phone call, the text, the email first, that's who took charge and responded. The hierarchy never mattered. Signaling people managers versus HR guidance supported, or decision makers versus fact finders, none of it mattered. And so I wonder, if it didn't matter in one of the most critical times in company history where our teams needed us to show up the most, why does it matter at all? And this isn't a story about COVID response. I know many of you yourselves have those and were long after those initial stages, but this is really a story about an opportunity, and honestly where I think it's an opening and a deep desire for HR to take an even bigger role in the way we move forward in business, the way that changes are made, and the leaders who make them. This is about how we influence change and continue to make our presence known even when we are not in the room. Next slide, Lori. We had a lot of cliches and common phrases in retail. Like most businesses, retail was an ever-changing environment. And in the last 2 decades that I was working there, that speed for change seemed to rapidly increase year after year. And we always used to go back and say the only constant in retail was change. That was the only constant thing we ever dealt with, was every year we were changing constantly. Retail is not the only ever-changing business out there. In fact, many of you come from all sorts of industries that are constantly evolving, and if 2020 taught us anything, it's really how to adapt and work through unexpected change when there is no data and there is no analytics to make decisions. You still have to evolve. And following those last 18 months, HR has more opportunity than ever to really make their presence known through influencing changes, not only for the people, but for the ways that we do business. And over each decade, the human resources organization has continued to evolve and shift with the needs of the business. And in my own personal experience, I moved into HR with the company in 2007, and I learned how to set up new employees and how to help employees with their day-to-day questions in an HR office, and helping with payroll and doing learning and development and doing phone screening. All of those things we did at that time in that same office in that one location. And now you fast forward to 2021, that role doesn't even exist anymore that I was originally hired into. There's now a structure at Nordstrom of business partners that have clusters of locations and specialists that work remotely in recruiting and payroll, and then there's an entire employee service center set up for all those daily needs. And what has never changed, though, was the need for human resources. What's never changed is the presence that's felt by the leaders within the human resources teams and the way that the business relies on HR to have a seat at the table when evolution still needs to take place. The roles look a little bit different. The days may be filled with different types of responsibilities. And I don't know about you, but I think this future state that we're looking to right now on this slide, that's a lot more exciting than where we came from originally. Now we're talking about how to support and build diverse cultures when everyone's working in different places. We get to have more and more conversations where we learn from our people what diversity and inclusion means to them in order to create a place where we can feel a sense of belonging. We use data now not just to have a seat at the table, but to lead a discussion around the people that the data is referring to and how we can tell stories that bring the data and analytics to life and create real meaning for our companies. And when we get to do it on different terms, the kind that allows us as HR teams to be more agile and flexible and to lean in where and when it's needed by thinking and working differently as an organization. Next slide. HR is so uniquely positioned to influence change in organizations because of all of our key differentiators as an organization. HR's cultivated deep relationships with both employees and leaders within a total org. We've learned to build trust over the years with those leaders and with employees, and HR teams themselves have gone through decades of change and identity shifts within their own organization, and they can really light the way as other changes in the business are made. And really, most importantly, because of their connection to the employee at all stages within the life cycle, we can really be advocates for the employee in ways that companies are able to better understand the desire and the need for this constantly changing workforce. I, constantly think of, for a decade, we have had, maybe over a decade, I don't know, but we've had this new generation of a workforce really telling us that they want something different. They're telling us that they want more flexibility in their schedule, and they want the ability to work from more than one location, whether that be home or an office or a little bit of both. They've been telling us for a long time that they want those things, but most companies, it took a global pandemic for us to respond to systems we could have had in place for years if we were just listening to that workforce that was telling us there's a different way to do things. And I think we learned that during the COVID pandemic, when there was no data, the passion HR leaders have for supporting people can never be told through the numbers. It needs to be told through those stories and through those things that our teams and our employees are constantly telling us so that we can get ahead the next time we go into a huge crisis, or the next time that we have to shift the way we do business, or we need to think differently. I think that we have all the data we need through the stories that our people are telling us. So I'll leave you with these 3 key takeaways to think about as you go back to your business and you continue influencing positive change in your companies. You can move to the next slide. But the first one, like I said, is more storytelling. So I think for a long time, one more slide. I think for a long time we used data and analytics because we were trying to shift into this business partner role and to do different things. But I think now we can shift a little bit more away from that and really break through just having to provide metrics and numbers and telling the stories around the data, but really getting back to the heart of our people and really having leaders understand the individuals that are experiencing some of the things in our company, whether they be new initiatives or changes or whatever it might be, and really think about and use those stories in order to bring that data more to life. And the second one is embodying the change. So living it, thinking ahead, getting creative, advocating more for what we think. So speaking up when we're seeing things that could potentially not just change the people, but change the business. Because so many of our businesses would never exist without the people. So we have to start thinking of ourselves as just the, kind of the people who speak up, or the HR teams that speak up for people, and really start to see what business things do we see? Where can we lean into the business more? So really embodying some different things. And then number 3 is communicate with flexibility. And what I mean by that is that we need to learn how to communicate with different people and genders and generations and so much more as we roll out big changes. And I think a lot of us already know that, and we've seen that, and we're shifting into that a little bit more. I know in my history, I saw communication plans that were fairly standard. They were really good, but once we found a really good system, we tended to rinse and repeat that over and over. And then when big change was happening, we sometimes forgot that that big change was happening at many layers within a company, in many levels within. And when we're speaking to individual contributors or new employees or department managers versus directors, and just all of these different people who have different buy-in, who go through change. They have less experience and they may not understand how to go through changes. They may have never seen them before. So I constantly think about, the timelines and the talking points and the Q&A were all fantastic to have, and it gave us a universal language. But I often wonder how many people didn't understand that language and how many we left behind who we expected them to experience change how we thought they should. And we weren't flexible enough to change some of those communication plans based on who we were talking to. So I constantly think there's this way we influence change within our whole organization is not just making the change, but the way we experience the change. And part of that influence can be being more flexible based on who we're communicating with. And then I want to go back to that quote in the beginning. You know, influence is not when you're the one talking, yet your words fill the room. It's when you're absent, but your presence is still felt everywhere. And I'm excited to see where HR goes. I think there's a huge opening and opportunity and desire for HR to be a part of more conversations within their companies. And I'm just excited to see where you all take those companies and go back to your businesses. But it's been a pleasure speaking with this group and talking about the amazing future ahead for HR professionals. And I wanted to just kind of talk about something that I was passionate about as we leave here on this Friday afternoon, and I hope that you feel inspired to go back and lead some change in your organization. I love being a part of this group, and I'm excited to connect with some of you through LinkedIn or other conferences like this. And I don't know if there's any Q&A based on the forum. I'm happy to answer anything, and if not, thanks so much again, Lori, for having me.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much. And I think you brought up some very valid points. We're talking to HR leaders. That's what this entire summit is all about. And HR has changed. HR has changed so much in the last, I mean, you said more than 10 years, but I think even in 10 years, the face of HR has altered. There's so many different layers to HR now. HR was always sort of like a back office kind of thought for a lot of people, and now it's to the forefront with the quarantine and everybody having to be remote. HR leaders became therapists in a lot of ways, and they really had to work with the emotional side of people working remotely in so very many ways. It has really changed the aspect of what HR is really all about. They're the top tier of the company. They're the leaders. They're the ones that really are the people, the ones that the people, you know, reflect on most when they need to have questions answered or they have problems. They go to HR. I mean, companies need to have good, strong HR departments now to be, you know, winning companies, to be successful. Employees require that. They need that. They expect that. So I think what you've brought up was so many important, valid points. I am curious to ask you, since you've been in different layers and different worlds of HR, what do you think will be the forefront of HR, say even in the next 5 years? Where do you think the development will go?
You know, I honestly, I think, you know, one of the biggest things I saw even within the last probably 2 years, and obviously, you know, I left my corporate position about a year ago, but what I really see the most part is kind of even moving out of this whole term of thinking of it as HR, right? And it's just kind of moving into, I think the future changes even the name of the organization, right? And it was HR, and it feels like an identity that almost isn't our identity anymore. It feels like it's something to just do with people, you know, like, and I don't know what the new language will be, but I think there will be a new language in just, you know, the whole organization at all. And I think one of the biggest things I've seen is the fact that it's like we don't just lead people initiatives. We are embedded into every part of the business the same way a CEO or COO or whomever would be. And I saw that at least at my company, and we had an amazing CHRO at the time, and she wasn't influencing people topics. She was influencing everything that went on, from business and how we move forward in e-commerce. And, you know, it wasn't, because everything tied back to the people, and we couldn't make any business decisions unless we knew what the impact was going to be, and the impact was always either to the customer or the people that worked for us. So that's where I think it's like there's no differentiator anymore between, you know, what HR does and what a business leader does. So I think you'll see that business partner model, although I think it's critical, I think you'll see a business partner evolve into more of a decision maker and in an influential role, even more so than they are today.
Okay, I agree with you. And what would you suggest companies need to do to prepare for that, and how to be more flexible to embrace the next couple of years so that they are on board to do and make those changes? How do you suggest they create that flexibility to grow in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way to create the flexibility to shift and evolve as an organization is to already have really good systems in place for the things that will always fall within. You know, we do still need good HRIS systems and talent systems and benefit systems. So if organizations don't already have, you know, kind of top-notch employee, you know, able to be accessible to the employee when the employee needs it, if we don't have those kind of systems in place, I think it's hard to ever be able to evolve truly to where we could be, because we'll get tied down by those things, because we do still need to be a part of those things, and they take up a lot of time and a lot of, you know, our current initiatives around people within companies. So I think, you know, it's been interesting, because I think in the last probably handful of years companies have been trying to get into a more employee self-service model, and now I think after the last 18 months we realized like maybe we went a little too far with, you know, employee self-service, and we need more of a mixed kind of solution. But I think that's probably the number one way to prepare HR into some of these things. I think that I said in one of the slides would be our future is we've got to make sure first that we have, you know, the crucial systems in place. So
I agree. Very, very important points that you made. I think it's a very excellent presentation. Definitely timely. Really definitely addressed a lot of things that people need to be thinking of and making the right growth points for themselves as well as for their organizations, and so that everybody is up to speed and offering their employees the best that they can in order to keep the best employees. I mean, otherwise people will be disenchanted and look for something where organizations that are offering what their needs are requiring. So very valid, very great points. I thank you for your time today, thanking you for making yourself available to us and to share some great tips. At this point, I'm just going to wrap up the rest of this Leaders Summit, and I am going to thank Amy and Edita and all of our panelists for their thoughts and their wisdom and their ability to spend time with us today and just give of themselves. I'd like to thank all of those that have joined us today. On behalf of all of the executives online, I would like to express gratitude for sharing and being here for this powerful thoughts and key HR insights. Your dedication to your profession sets a high benchmark for others to follow. And we surely will all leave this leaders event with newfound insights for our HR departments. This meeting is now officially concluded. I thank you all so much again, and everyone have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.